Thank you this morning. I do want to let you know my background is real. Yes, finally traveling for the first time in like 2 years beyond a quick trip to Michigan. Uh, so you'll hear some parrots, you'll hear lots of traffic because it is a loud city here. So I'm in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and I had the opportunity 2 days ago to go to a tequila tasting. And going through this, I know some people have had their issues in the past with alcohol, and I don't want to trigger things, but with it, I would like to enlighten you a little bit on what I learned. Now, this is from a tour guide, we'll put it that way. It's from a professional semi-con artist who's trying to extract resources and economy and value out of tourists. And tourists are this destructive menace that I'm playing right now. And so we're going through and we're having fun in this awesome country. And in this zone, they have awesome tequila tasting. So going through with tequila, most of what we get in the US is really not good at all. Most of what we have is processed sugars or corn syrup mixed with some coloring, and then you put it out there as an inferior product. What they have here, you have three different types of agave. So you have blue agave, and that's the true agave that you are supposed to create tequila out of. And then you have green agave, and that's what mezcal is made out of, with a slightly different process. And then you have a yellow or white agave, called a different way. And they make raicilla, which is a local down to this region. It's basically moonshine kind of setup, very clear and very, very potent. So the three different types, they're all mezcal. So all tequilas are mezcal, but not all mezcals are tequilas. Tequila needs to be from a certain region and made with the tequila region, and then made with the blue agave plant. When you're going through and you're creating tequila, it is harvested. It's supposed to be harvested once the plant has grown to a certain age, 5 to 50 years, and this plant grows and is carefully maintained. An agave plant, if people know what a yucca looks like, it's basically a giant yucca with a stalk that comes out the top, and that stalk needs to be taken off regularly. Otherwise, all of the energy of the plant will be going into the stalk, because that's how it reproduces. So it's going to go up and bloom and attract bees and pollen and go from there. So when you're trying to grow this commercially, you take the stalk off regularly, but you have to let enough stalks go so that you keep getting production. It's a whole deal, and a giant industry down here. But a lot of big time commercial folks, they will go and they'll take the plants when they're tiny, when they're only a couple of years old, and they'll cut everything down and then use the center core, and that's what makes it tequila. If you get the really good distilleries, they will wait till the plants mature fully, and then you have a much more robust flavor, and the profile changes quite a bit. So they'll let the plants grow for quite a while and then take them down. Once you distill tequila, so that goes through kind of like the moonshining process, any distilling process where you take your mash, you're breaking down the proteins within the fibers of the plant itself, and then creating sugars. And then sugar is, the sugars are eaten and processed and fermented, and then it forms an alcohol. And that alcohol is boiled off and then run through a still. And the steam, it basically condenses the vapors, and then that drops out. So your initial vapors are your heads, then you have your body, and then you have your tails. And so the initial vapors are really strong, and that's the ethanols, and that's the really, whenever you sniff a drink and it really hits your senses really hard, and it tastes really harsh and bitter, or not necessarily bitter, but very harsh on your tongue. That's they pulled too much of the alcohol off of the heads on the very beginning of the distilling process. If they do it right, you should be getting the body zone. And so with the body of alcohol, that you shouldn't be getting these basically not the good chemicals, not the good poisons, because it's all kind of poison, but you're supposed to be getting the zone that will give you less hangovers, if not any hangovers. And that's the perfect spot for tequila. And then if you get into the tails, you're getting into kind of some nastier stuff that doesn't work well either. So you got to get the right sweet spot. And then through there, once you have that basic product, aging really changes what's going on with it. So you have your white tequilas, your blancos. Those can be directly off the still, and that they can sell them immediately, and they're kind of the lower priced. Then you have your añejo tequila, and that's been aged between 3 and 5 years. And so on that, it turned, and they usually age them in whiskey casks or wine casks that have been burned so that they are like whiskey and bourbon. So it turns that golden color and absorbs some of the flavors from that. But the way they've rigged it is they have an extra añejo now, so that after 5 years, it's this darker, semi-darker, and a little bit different spirit. But they've kind of gamed the system. So if they age it for 1 year and a day, then it jumps into the añejo category. If they age it for 3 years or 5 years and a day, then it jumps into the extra añejo category. And so by doing that, they kind of rigged the system. If you go with a better supplier of this, they will actually tell you actually how long it's aged for. But if you have tequila that's aged for more than 7 to 8 years, it turns vinegary and goes bad. So you have a window with it. So if you're holding on to a tequila forever, it's not a good idea. It should be consumed or given away as gifts if you don't consume. And so that works then. We got to try out a whole bunch of different styles. We got to try out the raicilla, which is local there. We got to try out mezcal, which has a much more robust and smoky flavor than tequila in some instances, and can be harsher, or it can be smoother than some. It's just all a mix, and it depends on the brewer. The industry here, though, supplies a lot of people with labor, a lot of people with work. Does pretty well. Parts of it have been taken over by cartels, other parts haven't been, so it's kind of a mixed bag. Cartels down here are basically like Amazon and Google and other giant industries up in the United States. So you kind of got to think of it that way. Walmart is a cartel, and so if you're going to Walmart and you're buying stuff from Walmart, they're a worldwide cartel. And sometimes the labor practices and the violence behind it are equal. It's pretty weird. So trying to reframe the brain a little bit here while enjoying the awesome scenery, but also taking into account the issues that there are. So overall, if you are drinking tequila, if you can source it from better distillers, and how you figure out what those better distillers are is up to your own research. If you have a different flavor profile that your palate enjoys, you can go through and pick out what you want. If you start with an extra añejo first, if you're doing a sampling, so you go from like the darker tequila to the lighter, the more opportunities your tongue has to be acidified from the product, the more you can taste the notes, and so it'll be better. So don't start with the light stuff and go to the dark stuff like you do with wine. Instead, start dark and go to lighter. And overall, if it's something that you enjoy, this is a wonderful region to go and check it out. But if you don't, no worries. Now you know a little bit more about tequila. And to conclude this speech, tequila comes from work and life. So tequila agave. It's a work-life balance, is what the guy was saying. And so in the region, in the local dialect, it was tequila was work because the plants took work. And when the different colonizers came through, I think it was a German guy that coined agave, and that's a Latin root. And I think it has a couple different meanings, but I think he was meaning it as life, because it becomes the life of you when you're down here. So that was kind of a little bit of trivia, and it may be complete bullshit for tourists. It may be true. Time to look it up. I haven't had an opportunity yet, hence being a hot pocket speech. So back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.